And so want to welcome everyone. And I want to introduce Karen Oliva, who will, she will be providing interpreting, as well as Jose Artiga. And before I turn it over to Karen, I'm going to ask her to make an announcement just about the interpreting and how to access the interpreting. And then I'm going to ask Karen to talk about the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador, CISPAS, which is one of the co-sponsors of this report back. And then we have David Paul, who will speak about the Task Force in the Americas, which is also the other co-sponsor. And then Jose will be speaking about Share Foundation, which is the third co-sponsor. And Karen.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to give a brief announcement in Spanish. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Karen y yo y José vamos a estar interpretando hoy. Si necesitan interpretación, me pueden mandar a mí un mensaje privado. Si gustan, nada más avisándonos que va a necesitar interpretación. Y para acceder la función de interpretación, Carl, pusiera abajo, lo tuviera que activar y abajo pudiera encontrar el icono del mundo y luego uno nada más, presiona ese botón y puede elegir ahí el idioma en el que le gustaría escuchar el programa. Entonces, otra vez, si necesitarían interpretación, me pueden mandar a mí un mensaje privado y así podemos aprender la función de interpretación. Y ahora voy a regresar al inglés. And so, yeah, hi everyone, my name is Karen. I'm here with CISPAS, the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador. CISPAS is a grassroots solidarity organization that has been accompanying the Salvadoran popular movement since 1980. We organize strategic campaigns against US government and corporate intervention in El Salvador, and accompany the Salvadoran popular movement in their work to realize their vision of participatory democracy and economic justice. Currently, our work is coordinated through the CISPAS National Office in Washington, D.C., but we also have 6 local chapters across the country. And currently we have a campaign to cut harmful aid to Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, particularly military and security aid, as well as economic development aid. And we've been carrying out that for the past 2 years. And so if you would like to support in that campaign, you can message me or send me an email, and I can put my email in the chat. And also, I'll put the link in the chat to a Take Action page that we have called, I think it's CISPAS.org/cut military aid, where you can send a pre-written email to your congressional representative urging them to cut that aid. But yeah, if you're interested in joining us for a congressional visit, also let me know, because that's always great. The Bay Area chapter of CISPAS has done a few congressional visits as well with certain members. But yeah, that's our current campaign. And yeah, if you're interested in getting involved, also feel free to message me or Carl, who's also part of the Bay Area chapter. But yeah, thank you.
And Jose, I think maybe you'd want to say what the Share Foundation is, and then I'll start the interpreting channel.
Sure. My name is Jose Artiga, and I am the Executive Director of the Share Foundation. We have been working with El Salvador for 41 years, and with Honduras in the last 13 years. And we are very proud of, accompanying communities. That's one of the missions that we do. We have organized some 10,080 delegates over the last 41 years, which is a different way of solidarity to physically walk with the people. In the last 3 years, we have been working with the people of Wapinol and organize multiple delegations that physically went into the jail with them. And when we came back, apply pressure. You can find us at share-elsalvador.org. We are based in Berkeley, and I'm very happy to work with CISPES and with all the Central America and Latin America big family, with co-pings and our friends in different struggles. I end this part by saying that, yes, we're celebrating the release of the Guapinol 8, but just last night, the president of FRANE, Miriam Miranda, was threatened, with killing her. So the struggle continues, and that's where we need to join hands and find a way to support our friends in Central America. Gracias.
And now to introduce David Paul from the Task Force on the Americas.
Okay. Hi, there's another member of our task force on here as well, Terry Matson. Task Force in Americas originally was founded in 1985, named a Marin Interfaith Task Force. Was basically grassroots human rights organization supporting social justice movements in Latin America and the Caribbean. And a main task has been to educate the North American public about the realities in Latin America and the US government's involvement. We have a website, taskforceamericas.org. They've been involved. We have a quarterly newsletter, which are all available on the webinar, and a number of list of resources. The members of the board have various levels of expertise and experience in a number of Latin American countries. We've sent a number of delegations to investigative delegations to Latin America, and especially election observers. We work in coalition with other groups and like to endorse and sponsor the efforts of other groups working around Latin America, and always open to having new members join us. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, David. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Amy Arginel. She's Arginel. She's a professor at University of San Francisco and also the director of the Masters in Migration Studies program.
Thanks, Carl. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm really excited to be here and in a much lighter space. We're celebrating the release of Guapinol, and really excited to be able to do that and talk a little bit about the context. So I'm going to give just a brief overview of kind of post-2009, the coup, what led to these really exciting inaugurations that we were able to participate in January. I met Jose Artiga in 2015 on one of my first delegations. And so I want to share a quote to start with, because I think it speaks to what Jose was talking about with this idea of accompaniment, but also what I think moves me to continue to do this work in partnership with communities in Honduras. So Ruth Wilson Gilmore says that solidarity is made and made again. It isn't something that just is, it is radical dependency. When we come to actually depend on each other. And so this is something that I think about a lot in the work with Share and what we've been able to do in the delegations, is walk with communities and continue to walk with them in the struggles that they're facing, continue to walk with them in their celebrations as well. So in 2009, there was a coup. I'm timing myself here actually, so making sure that I go correctly in my time. In 2009, there was a coup. Can you hear me? Okay. And Mel Zelaya, who was the former president, was over, his administration was overthrown. And what we saw was the next 12 years of the sacking of the country. And when I say sacking, I mean the complete robbing of all resources or selling off of resources to private entities. There was a slogan that came out called Honduras Open for Business. And what we saw was a neoliberal model in which it was about privatizing the country for the wealth of and the wealth and gaining of resources for the elite. And so with this Honduras Open for Business, we saw the funneling of Social Security. We saw the health sector completely depleted and robbed. We saw the privatization of roads and freeways. We saw concessions given to hydroelectric projects like we saw with the case of Berta Cáceres, and we currently see with a number of different communities. And we saw mining concessions granted in public and national parks like the case of Guapinol and San Pedro rivers. We saw development projects and tourist projects. And so when Jose Artigas spoke about the case of Miriam Miranda and the Garifuna peoples and the northern coast, we've seen their constant struggle for lands, even though we know that that is their ancestral right to those lands. And so this is the context. We also saw deep, deep resistance movements at the national level and also at the local community level. In the case of Guapinol, in the case of Copin and the movement for the Rio Guacarque. And what we see with indigenous communities and Afro-Indigenous communities throughout Honduras is a resistance movement that pushed and pushed and pushed and struggled and came together and fought, given all of the sacking of their lands, the depletion of their resources, the criminalization of their leaders, and the violence that was inflicted on them by the security forces. And so this is what leads us to this moment, this beautiful moment of these inaugurations. So in the case of Guapinol, it was in 2018 when we first visited, and we got to visit this beautiful river. And what had happened was, prior to our visit, when the mining company began to construct a road, so they were given a concession in a national park, the Calos Escaleras National Park. They were granted this concession illegally through corruption. And when they tried to build a road, the community became aware because sediment started to fall and the river was polluted. And so what the community did was they occupied the space to try to stop and halt the mining company. And they occupied this for 3 months, and the community leaders were criminalized. 32 in total were criminalized. They turned themselves in, and 8 ended up in prison. And for a while in a maximum security in prison under the time of COVID. They were in prison for a total of 914 days and 8 hours. There were multiple appeals. The court case began in, we got to witness the first part of the court case in Tocoa in December. A group from SHARE, we were able to accompany and be part of the Observatorio, which was witnessing. And then while we were there in December, it was postponed right before the holidays, right after the election, but right before the inaugurations, and at a deep, deep cost to the communities. There was a camp in front of the courthouse, which they were, people were coming to participate. People were coming to sleep in front, cooking. It was beautiful, beautiful space of solidarity, national solidarity, international solidarity of people coming. And so, to be there and hear that the court was going to be suspended until after the holidays was just a huge blow. Number one, because the camp was going and they had to deconstruct everything, but also because their family members were not able to come home to them. So right before the election, right before the inaugurations, our delegation was able to go, and I was able to return to Guapinol and sit in the observatory again for 2 days. And again, witness the deep collusion between the Ministerio Público, so the prosecutors, the judges, and the mining company. Just to see the ways in which these activists, these environmental activists, were criminalized. And so, there again, And the community requested us to come back, and some said, "Will you take this banner to the inauguration?" And so that's the banner that you can see behind me. And so when we were able to go to the inauguration, we were able to go with Guapinol in our hearts, and we were able to hear the president make the demand for the liberation of the Guapinol 8. Then, following our return, we stayed closely monitoring the case. And 2 weeks ago, the trial, it resumed. It had resumed throughout the inauguration. It ended. 2 were freed, and 6 were condemned. And again, a deep blow to the community. Imagine, right, what it means to this constant up and down, this roller coaster for the community. We had the camp there. And then last week, we got the news that a Supreme Court had ruled that there was no jurisdiction, and that the verdict was no, and that the Guapinol needed to be free. It took a week, but as of Thursday night, they were free. They were released from prison and are now home with their family. And it's a really, really exciting time. It's a beautiful time, because you could feel when we were there walking around the stadium with this banner, was that the mood was changing in the country, right? And with the Supreme Court annulment of the case, we see that. However, I want to end, because this is what I mean by solidarity is made and made again. What one of the leaders in Guapinol, Reynaldo, shared is that this struggle of almost 3 years to free their compañeros was only one part, a small part of this much larger struggle to defend the Guapinol River, the San Pedro River, and their national park. And so for us now, for me, when I say that solidarity must be made and made again, we can celebrate this moment, this time with the families, and be so excited that they are home where they belong. But we can't finish our solidarity, because we know that the extractive industries, that the selling off and privatization of resources will continue unless we continue to walk with the communities. And so Guapinol and San Pedro, while the leaders are free right now, they have a long battle ahead to fight against Inversiones Pinares and Ecotech, these mining companies, to end the concessions, to gain the rights for that public park to once again remain a national park, and to have access to clean, safe, and abundant drinking water, which those 2 rivers provide. So I'm going to end there, and I'm excited to continue with all of you to think about what radical dependency really looks like, and the ways in which we can continue to remake solidarity time and time again. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And it's my pleasure to introduce Terry Matson. And Terry can she can provide her affiliations, the organization she's representing tonight. But just to mention that Terry and I are also members of the board of directors of the Task Force on the Americas that David had introduced at the beginning.
And we have someone in the audience too, Maria Robinson, who's done a lot of Honduras solidarity work. So
It's all yours, Terry.
Okay, great, thank you. So I should also say, I was so pleased to be invited to join all of you in Honduras in January for Xiomara Castro's inauguration, because for me, it was the culmination of about 14, almost 16 months of travel throughout Latin America, serving as an election observer and solidarity worker, and many different hats I wore the last 14 to 16 months. And I went with a number of different organizations, principally Task Force on the Americas and Code Pink, but some of you may also know I work with the Sanctions Kill Coalition as well, which is a really big part of my Latin America and international work as a whole. But I want to just share with you some of the things that I've witnessed the last 16 months in the Americas that did culminate with Xiomara Castro's inauguration, and also dovetail nicely on a lot of your comments as well, Amy. So I thank you for that introduction, and I'm happy to see you again. I'm happy to see all of you again. So I'm currently talking with you from Mexico City, which has been my base for the last 14 months. And I have been in Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, Chile as well. And let me just say, sitting here in Mexico City, Mexico in general has been a really unique opportunity. And I also think we do not talk enough about the current president of Mexico and how the foreign policy voice that he has raised for all of the Americas, Latin America and the Caribbean. So let's start. One of my first trips was to, well, in the middle of I guess it wasn't the first, was to Colombia in May during the middle of the National Paro. The National Paro was a public pushback against a neoliberal model. And the Colombians are suffering very similarly to the Hondurans, which the Hondurans did over the last 12 years, the Colombians for an even longer period of time, where journalists, environmental activists, indigenous people are all assassinated, kidnapped, tortured, disappeared for protecting their land, their economy, their natural resources, all of those things, as Amy has described happening in Honduras. Then in July, from here in Mexico City, President AMLO gave a fascinating discourse. It was July 23rd, which was the 238th anniversary of Simón Bolívar's birth. He did this at here in Mexico City and had invited foreign dignitaries to attend his address, as well as very notable activists, journalists, and authors, notable people. He talked principally about, and it was fascinating that he used Simón Bolívar's birth because of Simón Bolívar being known as the liberator of North, South America, those countries that were of Spain, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and what we now know as Panama. And he talked about the need to create a body throughout the Americas that was representative of all Americans. And it was a distinct pushback on the OAS and how it is currently managed. And he went as far as to say, you know, the current people running the OAS are basically accepted as being on the US State Department payroll. So this was a huge statement coming out of Mexico, which prides itself as being a progressive government. They did not define themselves as a leftist government, but rather progressive. And that was a really significant message that he sent to everyone in the Americas, Caribbean as well. And then on September 18th, he reconvened after a 4-year pause, SELAC. And this was a really significant meeting in which everyone attended, but Colombia and Haiti, I want to say, didn't come. But everyone, with the exception of Paraguay and Uruguay, everyone, and this includes Guillermo Lasso of Ecuador, commented that there needed to be better economic integration for the Americas and the Caribbean, that the majority of the countries wanted to work together despite political differences. They wanted to find economic similarities and build a bloc similar to the EU. And people, even like the president of Ecuador, overtly said they wanted to be free to trade with China, Russia, and the United States, opening the door for a multilateral economy in the Americas. And this is very, very important that those comments were coming from center-right, centrist, progressive, and leftist governments. I should also say that President AMLO invited Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, overtly recognizing Maduro as the democratically elected president of Venezuela. He also initiated the dialogue between the Venezuelan opposition and the elected government of Venezuela. That has come to a halt with the kidnapping, with the US kidnapping of Alex Saab, and that's a whole nother issue, and I'm happy to talk to you more about that offline if you like. So this takes us through September and early October, and then in November started a whole series of elections through the Americas. On November 7, we saw presidential elections in Nicaragua, in which Daniel Ortega won re-election. And right after that election, he announced that they would be leaving the OAS, and which is a 2-year process, by the way. That was significant. And then he's also announced that Nicaragua is going to be joining the Belt and Road Initiative with the Chinese. So again, we're looking at a country pushing for a multilateral position in the world, and also looking to break up the OAS possibly. And then we had regional elections in Venezuela, and then we had presidential elections in Honduras, and we happily excitedly saw the election of Xiomara Castro. Now, what happened with her election, and I think this is really important and can kind of in a nutshell show you the importance of several things. She had she won by a huge margin, which unfortunately is what the progressive and leftist movements in the Americas need at this point to avoid any sort of controversy regarding the results of the election. She created a party system that was enormous, and she created a coalition, and which came into play on the 22nd of February, when the Congreso Nacional, National Congress, there was a big split on February 27 within the party, including within the, I want to call it the National Assembly, I apologize, the Congress, including Libre Party members who split with what they thought was going to be, the elected officials of the Congress. Now, what she did on the 22nd that was the 22nd, and then she called for that was the 20th. And on the 22nd, she called for a vigil in front of the National Congress to rally people in Tegucigalpa and throughout the country to stand with her, to stand with all of the political figures that were elected on the 27th of November. And that included National Congress people. So this was huge in holding the government together, not just at the presidential election level, but also at the congressional level. And some of this is still being contested. But on January 27th, she was peacefully inaugurated. It was a very exciting day. I don't think I've ever been to Honduras where people were laughing, smiling, and crying with joy. It was an absolutely beautiful thing to see. The National Stadium is where the inauguration was held. It was filled with red flags in the bleachers, and also with turquoise blue flags. And I want to mention this turquoise blue flag because one of the things that Xiomara Castro's government has done is not only recaptured justice for the country, full political participation of the country, but it's also recaptured the culture of the country. The flag under the National Party leadership was changed from turquoise blue to almost a navy blue, and it's very subtle, and I don't know how many people actually noticed it, but come election day, the flag in the stadium was turquoise blue and white. And the turquoise blue and white is the original blue of the Central American Republic. It does not represent the National Party. And so there's been a recapturing of the culture as well. I think what I really want to share with you and see, if I can just, with her inauguration, with President Ortega's inauguration, with the reaffirmation of the PSUV party, with the Venezuelan elections in November, people across the Americas have voted for national sovereignty. They have voted pro-national sovereignty. That means anti-interventionism, and it also means anti-Balkanization, which is going to be a huge thing that is going to start unfolding in Europe. And it also was about national sovereignty, natural resource sovereignty, and about electing governments that are for the people and governments that are interested in developing economies of the people versus neoliberal privatization and of regional integration, promoting CELAC, diluting the OAS or reformulating the OAS and creating a multi-lateral hemisphere. So that, I know I probably ran over time, Carl, I apologize.
Well, no, that's great. I think that gave us a real
I hope
flavor of the
that, you know,
inauguration. And I just
the-
want to bring up that we have with, you know, kind of showing the support that we had, the Task Force on the Americas. We have the treasurer, Carol Costa of the Task Force on the Americas. And I just also want to thank her because personally, because she helped make it financially possible for me to go on the delegation. And so we also attended two other inaugurations, and want to have Richard Hobbs talk about the inauguration we attended in Macualizo. And Richard, if you're with us. You're muted, Richard.
Good afternoon, everyone. Do you have those pictures up? There we go. Good afternoon. I'm Richard Hobbs. I'm an immigration attorney, executive director of Human Agenda that takes people to Cuba on emulation tours. And I'm also a member of the SHARE delegation that went to Honduras. During the week of January 24th, not one, but two powerful women were sworn in representing Partido Libre on the 27th, Xiomara Castro, but on the 25th, Jacqueline Trecho was elected the new mayor of Macualizo. Here is a photo of our delegation in front of the main signage of Macualizo. In the municipality and the departamento or the state of Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is one of 18 states or departamentos in Honduras. Macualizo has about 38,000 residents, including 3,000 in the town proper, and also 35,000 in 55 very poor agricultural communities. The new mayor was interviewed the night before by Father Melo of Radio Progreso in this photo. An early morning mass and blessing for the new mayor were held at this church off the main square. Here, the new mayor, Jacqueline Trejo, and Vice Mayor Marco Tulio walked down the aisle of the church. Father Jesus Aechu stated that the most prominent characteristic of Jacqueline is her compassion for others, in alignment with Jesus and the church. He reminded everyone that for 17 years, Jacqueline Trecho took care of elderly people, always working as a city councilwoman or regidora on behalf of the most poor and vulnerable. He said Macualizo is fortunate to have a mayor who will serve everyone and not be sectarian like the dominant politicians of the past. He said that Macualizo will rise up with her in power, spreading truth, honesty, and progress. Father Aechu also stated, yo también la empujé un poco. That is, he too worked to convince her to run again. Let me explain. Jacqueline was very reluctant to run a third time for mayor. As a supporter of Mel Zelaya and a founder of the Partido Libre from the beginning, she had lost elections for mayor in 2013 due to fraud at the polls and the military occupation of the room with the ballots, and also had lost in 2017 when nearly 2,000 people were brought in by the National Party from outside Macualizo to illegally vote in the election. Father Aechu blessed the new mayor and the vice mayor. Jacqueline had a procession to the stadium where the inauguration took place. She made national news in this photo as the new Partido Libre mayor of Macualizo. Here, she receives the mayoral sash. The tradition in Macuiliso is also to pass the baston or the baton of Macuiliso ever since Macuiliso was founded in 1794 by 41 families from Spain. Jacqueline wanted to demonstrate how she would share power with everyone in the municipality. Here, scores of people from the 55 rural communities line up to symbolically share power. Rural male leaders shared the baton, and so did female rural leaders. January 25th was Honduran Women's Day, and women made a powerful showing in Macuiliso. The new mayor, Jacqueline Trejo, shared a new vision and her priorities for Macuiliso. She said that the neoliberal system had harmed the people, that healthcare had been postponed, that schools are in crisis, that farmers lack seeds and tools to be successful. She stated that she would work to reduce malnutrition, prioritize health and education, especially for seniors, increase the Human Development Index, work against violence in all forms, particularly against women and children, and improve agricultural production, since farmers are the ones who produce the wealth. She emphasized that no one is more important than anyone else. Todos somos Macuilizos, and that she would work to produce a new Macuiliso with transparency, responsibility, and participation based on unity, solidarity, and love. She ended by saying, "Hasta la victoria, compañeros." The first order of business for the new local government was a convenio, or an agreement, with the Share Foundation, recognizing the commitment of the Share Foundation to provide musical instruments to promote local cultural opportunities for youth. Here, the executive director of the Share Foundation, Jose Artiga, receives the key to Macuiliso from Jacqueline Trejo. After the inauguration, the celebration commenced in the stadium. Here I am celebrating with the new mayor. Then reality hit. When the mayor and her new team went to the municipal offices, all of the books related to the finances of Macuiliso were gone. The local Partido Nacional had taken all the financial records to hide years of corruption and plunder. Jacqueline would have to travel to Tegucigalpa and sue the party. Partido Nacional argued that the books belonged to their administration, but the magistrate disagreed in Tegucigalpa and said, no, the books belong to Macuiliso. Jacqueline is still working to get the hard drive from the previous administration. Of the 38 million Lempira local budget, about 28 million comes from the federal government and 10 million from local taxes. But Jacqueline explained that there is no local custom to pay taxes. Our delegation also visited the Poza Verde community and fertile lands adjacent to Rio Colupa. The land is managed by Rigoberto Polanco, or Don Rigo, as they call him, and he is proud of the delicious radish crop. Don Rigo made suggestions to the new mayor that an agricultural co-op be established for youth and other programs too, to provide opportunities for youth so they don't have to abandon Macuiliso. When I asked Jacqueline about how many people had left Macuiliso looking for work in the United States, she estimated about 5,000. Don Rigo also explained the importance of diversifying crops and getting rid of middlemen, so crops can go directly from the producer to the consumer. Afterwards, we asked the new mayor about her #1 priorities in office. Here she is with Vice Mayor Marco Tulio. She said that #1 would be education, because for 2 years, children have not attended school due to COVID, and the kids do not have computers. When I interviewed her last Sunday on WhatsApp, she said that school would start again on February 21st, last Monday, but that there were huge problems. there were a lack of teachers, and many of the older teachers have not kept up with curriculum in the 21st century. She said there were a lack of desks in school, so she asked parents to have their children take a chair to school. Many parents said they didn't have chairs in their homes. I am convinced that Jacqueline is doing everything possible to rise Macuilizo up, as Father Aicho said. She has worked every day, including weekends, since taking office. Before, meetings of the 8 city council persons and mayor were held behind closed doors. Now, every 15 days, they are held publicly in an auditorium, and the meetings are broadcast on Radio Actualidad. Macuilizo has a lot to celebrate. Here, new Mayor Jacqueline Trejo celebrates her victory with the Share Foundation in the main square of Macuilizo. Jacqueline Trejo may come to the Bay Area this year. Please get to know her and support the economic and social development of Macuilizo. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And now I'm going to, my pleasure to introduce Vicky Anavaro, who she will be talking about another exciting inauguration that we attended in Las Vegas. And no, they don't have casinos there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vic, or Vicky. I am going to talk just really quickly. I wanted to just say, I don't think we can understate just what Amy brought up earlier with, and also Terry too, with walking the banner. And I think that the inauguration, just before I get into Las Vegas, the inauguration was a time of healing for the community there, and just the fact that we were able to walk the banner, and also other community leaders and community organizations were able to have moments to walk their banners, and just have moments of silence for those who have been oppressed and lost during the dictatorship, was just really beautiful. And it was also really beautiful to see the joy extended in multiple communities that we visited. And so while we were in Las Vegas, we had the opportunity to actually stay in Victor Hugo, who you're seeing now, in his home, his family home, where he grew up. And we were there with his parents and his siblings, his nieces and nephews. And it was just a really beautiful time to be together as a community, and to me really encompassed what solidarity looks like. And it looks like, you know, spending time with each other and eating and sharing stories and sharing even just games with the kids, playing Uno. And it was just really powerful. And I think Mark is going to talk about Victor Hugo more, but you can see in the community and his family that this man is very, very revered and honored and respected, and just has the heart of the community at the forefront of his campaign, and at the forefront of what he's hoping to do. I also wanted to say that Las Vegas is is where Honduras's coffee industry comes from. For the most part, its coffee is produced in Las Vegas. And then on top of that, it houses one of the biggest gold mines in Central America. And so where they are in their community, they are working actively with a gold mine. And so this was a really interesting dynamic. We traveled there with some members of the Radio Progreso, is who we kind of partner with while we're in Honduras. And they were talking a little bit about the kind of complication, it's more complex than just, you know, anti-mining or pro-mining binaries, and that Victor Hugo has his community at heart. And knowing that there are 1,400 families who are working for the mining company, but also not wanting to be sold out to the mining company or bought out by the mining company. So I think it was really exciting to kind of hear more from him and how he plans to work with the mining company in a way that's going to be only beneficial to the community rather than harmful. So yeah, I think Mark is going to share a little bit more about Las Vegas, but yeah. Oh, this is the Copinol banner again, and we were able to go up onto the stage there actually and hold up the banner as well. So just really powerful overall. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Vicky. And now to introduce Mark Copeland, and he's the one who's also been providing the slideshow that's in the video that's accompanying our presentations. And Mark, I'm turning it over to you. And if you can turn on your video so that we can see your beautiful face.
Got them all going at once. Hello, everybody. Good to join you. I want to talk a little bit about Victor as an example of the role that the Sheriff Foundation and the delegations have had over, as Amy said, 2015 for her, 2018 for me, much earlier than that for Jose and Cher. And I think that Victor is a great example of how we've all impacted that. And it comes down to the long-term relations. I'm going to start with the results and then go back into a little more of that story. The long-term relations with Radio Progreso and all the other organizations that we work with there. And in this case, Terry and I and some others met Victor a few years ago, about 3 years ago, at his school. He was an economics teacher here, and he was sent to this school that was far away from his family and where he lives as a punishment for demonstrating against the presidential elections in 2018. And so we got to know him as the teacher in this school. He had his arm broken when the police beat him up weeks after the demonstration. As a signal that it wasn't appreciated. He was suspended for like 3 months. He wasn't suspended from work. He had to go to work every day. His pay was suspended. Him and a handful of other teachers that were like him reassigned to distant locations so that he had to travel, etc. Well, this time we had no idea that he was going to become the mayor of Las Vegas. It was certainly far from my vantage point. And Jose might have a little more information than me, but somewhat later he came out and said that he was going to run, and we were all able to participate just a little bit and help with that. But then the campaign happened, and then like the presidential candidate, he won with over 70%. Let's have some truth telling here. He does have 8 brothers and sisters, so half the town is family. It's amazing. The whole family is very much like Victor. They're just incredibly beautiful people, and this is him giving us the key to the city. And I have to tell you, when we were at his school, I got very ill and had to be taken to the clinic and put on an IV. I was going down really fast and I needed to use the bathroom desperately. And the director of the school told me that, oh, I'm sorry, the bathrooms are broken. They're not serviceable right now. And it went from that to Victor being able to give us the key to the city. So change is imminent. And our long-term relationship is what brought us to this and to the presidential inauguration. The long-term relationship with Radio Progreso, with the other organizations, ERIC, which is part of Radio Progreso, they did a lot to educate us and to keep us aware of what was going on, what the problems were. We've been able to have a really good picture as we enter the country and go into communities. They've brought us to meet people in all corners of Honduras, to become friends with people in all corners of Honduras, because the really great thing is that we keep coming back. You know, we were here visiting the Garifuna people for literally an hour. We had very little time, but this was our second trip there. And being able to say to them, look at our faces, become familiar, because we will be back. When we came to visit these prisoners in the prison, when we went to Paso a Paso to meet the children in the community there, everywhere that we've gone, these relationships have been developed. And so when people say to me, how on earth did you guys get invited to the presidential inauguration? It's because of that long-term commitment. My first trip in 2018, just before the takeover of power, or well, not takeover, he just rolled it over, but the violence that we saw was amazing. And I've never seen it since, because our presence has made the difference. When we have these press conferences, the press show up. There's a lot of coverage, nationwide and internationally. And meanwhile, we continue to learn more and more about what's going on, get more and more connected. We're looking now at Vamos a la Milpa, which is one of the most successful campaigns in getting food on the tables of families that they produce themselves with help of fellow Hondurans, Radio Progreso people learning themselves how to teach, how to develop agriculture. And it's just been an incredible long-term venture and journey. And each delegation has been different people. But the fact is, in every delegation, there are 300 of us, because we're always there every time. The people, Rosa Maria, many people that we're very close to, but even in these small communities, when we go back, this gentleman here that played the guitar, I was able to go back and bring him some picks and some instrument strings for his guitar, something specific for him. And the relationships that we've dealt and had have grown to the point that, for gosh sakes, in December when we were there, we were invited to the presidential inauguration. And I'm still amazed that we were allowed to go into the prison, to see prisoners, to take them food and other things. And it's just been an incredible journey. Thanks to Cher, thanks to Radio Progreso, thanks to Eric, Foro de Mujeres, which connects us with another 16 or 17 women's organizations around the country. We've really been able to say that our presence has been incredibly powerful for us, and in a small way has been helpful enough that they want us to continue coming. And I'm grateful for our friends in Honduras. I'm grateful for the 300 fellow delegates that each and every one of you, I hope we're on the next trip. And I hope that we have Victor coming here to the Bay Area as well, and that we have some of the Wapanol 8 and their spouses come as well. So it's been a great journey, and we're now on the path to support our Honduran friends in greater success. Thanks for taking time to listen to me.
Thank you, Mark. And that's a good lead in to now introduce Jose Artiga, who is, it'll take a moment, I'll get him from address us. And Mark or Jose Artiga is the executive director of the Share Foundation. He'll talk about kind of the ongoing commitment to Las Vegas and Macuiliso, but also the Vamos a la Milpa movement. And
Can you
Jose,
hear me in English?
yes, I think I've taken you out of the Jose was also providing interpreting, and you're now out of the interpreting.
Well, it's wonderful to accompany these communities in the long run. And as Mark was saying, we met the mayor now of Las Vegas, Victor Hugo, in a delegation that we went several years ago. And also the mayor of Macuiliso, we met her in December, and she invited us to come. So when we visit a community, we don't take it lightly, because it generates expectations in them and in us too. We got to know them, and in this case, I want to tell a short story about Professor Victor Hugo. When we met him several years ago, he said, "I wish that each school in Las Vegas have musical instruments." And now that he's the mayor, he said, "How about that idea I presented to you some time ago to bring guitars and violins?" He was very clear. He said guitars and violins, and of course other musical instruments for Las Vegas and Macuiliso. And his dream is that each school will have a number of instruments for children to play, to learn. And I think it's a symbol. If we can see the guitar, the violin, as a symbol of the new moment. The way we explain it is that when we were in 2018, with the US very visible presence was the tear gas bombs. Now we want to replace those tear gas with guitars. The idea is that they will find a co-op in Honduras to produce, to build those instruments, and we will complement with particular instruments that might be difficult to build down there, like a flute or an accordion or something like that. But that's the campaign that reflects the new moment of Honduras, and this comes to complement the campaign that we have been supporting for a number of years, which is Vamos a la Milpa, a campaign to produce food, which is very revolutionary because includes taking the land. We want to honor Zapata and the Zapatistas, that the land should be for the people that produce, not for the multinationals. So Vamos a la Milpa and Guitars for Honduras is a campaign of hope, a campaign that reflects the new moment, and also that will honor the Hondurans that wish to stay, that do not want to leave Honduras. We respect the right to migrate, but we respect the right of people to stay. And we want to invite you to support these campaigns, which concretely will be producing food, by buying seeds, local seeds, of corn, of beans, of vegetables, fruit trees. And the other one will be to produce musical instruments in Honduras, which also will provide jobs for local workers. And as I say, this is a campaign of hope, where we see the future of Honduras reshaping in this moment. Now that Juan Orlando is gone, it was difficult to remove him, but the people, had that as a goal. Now Juan Orlando is out, And we don't want to abandon the people of Honduras. We want to keep supporting them. And that's the invitation. We can elaborate more on questions, but we are full of energy, with lots of esperanza that this is it's a good moment for Honduras, and it's a good moment for the continent, from Colombia, Chile, Argentina, we hope Brazil, and Honduras is right there, advancing this struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. We're going to be opening it up to questions and comments, and so ask everyone if you could now turn on your video. We'd like to see everybody's beautiful faces. In a moment, you can all unmute yourselves, and like to kind of talk about some of the things that Jose just said that struck me in particular. Is he called the Vamos a la Milpa movement a revolutionary movement, and it's providing a model of sustainable, small-scale organic growing of food that is what we need right now to save the environment of the planet, but also making people less reliant on this very unfair, exploitative economic system, so that they're able to feed their families, and that it's movement building. It's these are the people involved in it are the people that have been involved in building the base for the Libre Party and building a movement for political change. And in the process of building that movement, they're building a movement to create a new economy that hasn't existed before, and where everyone has good healthcare, education, job opportunities, security, a dignified life. And as Jose was pointing out, that we are supporting people's right to migrate, but we are also supporting people's right to stay home, that they can, stay in their own country and have those opportunities to be able to feed their families. And here in San Francisco, that is, I think, a particular inspiration to us, because we are suffering the most extreme income inequality in the country here. And so it's inspiring to hear people in Honduras that are organizing to make these much needed changes. And as Amy was saying, we're walking with the communities in struggles that they are facing in Honduras. And in true solidarity, they're walking with us in our struggles here to get homeless people off the streets, and to have those, the equitable sharing of resources. And it's not going to be easy, because the problems of income inequality and marginalization aren't going to be solved overnight. Unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges that we face in here in the United States, and one of the biggest challenges that the Honduran people face, is the U.S. government and the policies that are favoring the rich, privatization, which is rampant in this country, but in Honduras, they were pushing for a policy of privatizing entire cities to allow transnational corporations to confiscate the land and to run the city as profitable to them. The struggle of the Guapanol community against the confiscation of their river and the contamination of their river by an extractive industry, and the struggle of the Garifuna people on the coast, who is fighting against the confiscation of their lands, and to build mega resorts for tourists along the Caribbean coast, and then to plant African palms. So these are the policies that are displacing people. They're forcing them to migrate and enriching the few at the expense of everybody else. And it's been our government that's been aiding and abetting these kind of policies. This, the kind of political struggle that Terry outlined that is still going on, even as as political powers, there's been political changes in Honduras, but the struggle for political power is that fight against the power that is still in the hands of the military and security forces, and we, as Terry was, as Amy was saying about, what happened to Xiomara's husband, Manuel Zelaya, when he was president, and there was a golpe de estado coup that took him out of the presidency. So we still need to demand that our congressional representatives pass HR 2716, and that the senators pass SB 388, and that all of our representatives that we are in contact with here in the Bay Area sign on as co-sponsors to that, and to do the same with the Berta Cáceres Act. And so that's why we need everyone in here to take action. What do be able to see everybody. So if you can all turn on your video camera, so we can all see you. And Jose was, he'll in a moment, he'll be also later describing the involvement in future delegations. But there's one other way that you can all help in supporting this movement and by taking action. We know it's going to take a strong grassroots action to create real change, and that's what our compañeros and compañeras in Central America and Mexico call the trabajo de hormigas, the work of the ants, and it's that grassroots organizing. And that grassroots organizing takes funds. And these are movements that are unlikely to get funding from the corporate foundations. They're funded entirely by individual donations by people like you. And we're supporting campaigns that are essential to the success of the visions of our friends in Honduras. And we've all heard about the freeing of the Guapanol 8, who are wrongly imprisoned for defending their river and their community. So freeing them will now strengthen the movement to protect their river and stop the conditions that are displacing people and forcing them to migrate. The other is to expand the Vamos a la Milpa movement that's fighting for food sovereignty. And our Share Foundation has a goal of raising $69,000 for the Vamos a la Milpa movement. Tonight, we have a goal of raising $1,000 to support that grassroots organizing. Planting season is coming up in May, and we need to raise money to help buy those packages of seeds and beans that Jose was talking about, and that we saw in on a previous delegation in last July. So this, the seeds are specially produced, and there's they're seeds to make sure that people have the likelihood of those being able to raise those plants and to have a sustainable garden. So I know that someone out there wants to break the ice and make a donation. So asking again if everyone can turn on their video so that we can see you raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself and let us know. But right now, I'm gonna, we can get this all done with right now because our goal is $1,000. Is there anyone that can give us $1,000 tonight? Oh, I was expecting somebody who's gonna jump it right in there. So, you know, you're gonna have to hear me keep talking, but there's a good way that you can get me to stop talking. Our goal is 1,000. That'll just be 10 people giving $100 each. So who do we have to get the ball rolling? And I think I just heard someone talking. You can all unmute yourself. Hi, Ramon. Beautiful.
Betty
Great.
Martinez and I will give you $100.
Beautiful. Great, thank you. And Jose, would you put the information in the chat on, you know, just the link to the Share Foundation website? And also if you want to pay by check, you can, you know, the mailing address to send in the check. Share is a full 501c3 status nonprofit organization, which means that it's all tax deductible also. So we have our first $100 donation. Who's our second? Who will be our second? Is that you, Barbara?
I'll give you 100, Carl.
Who is that?
Michael.
Oh, Michael.
Bass.
Hi, Michael. So we have Barbara Wittenberg. Thank you, Barbara. And Michael Bass.
Yeah.
And Michael, he's known him for, oh, sorry about the, let me disconnect that. Do we have a third $100 donor? So
Sign
far,
me
we've
up,
raised
Carl.
300. Who was that?
Richard, sign me up.
Richard, beautiful. Thank you, Richard. So let's say 300, 400. We're up to 400. Okay, so I just, we're almost halfway there. Another 100. Oh, Carol, bless you. Thank you, Carol. So now we're at the halfway mark. So that's that. Now I get to raise my hand. So I'm kicking us over the halfway mark. We're on just $400 now from our goal.
Oh, Carl, I was just going to say 50 and I was muted.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Do we have someone to match Carol's 50? And then we'll
I'll
be
match her
up to
50.
What's that?
I'll match her 50.
Okay.
Is that Mark or?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Mark. Okay. Great. So for
Make it 100 and somebody could match the other 50.
what's, oh, you're making it 100. Oh, great. Thanks, Mark. So now we're, let's see,
I'll match Carol's 50.
Yay, Terry.
oh, great, great. So now we're up to 700. Just,
Mhm.
and that $50 is tremendously important. That $50 will help purchase native seeds, farming tools, and training for an entire family to plant their milpa.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Includes beans, cassava, plantains, medicinal plants, vegetables, and fruit trees. So do we have another 50? We're up to 700. We're just 300 away from our goal.
This is Bill Langford.
Hi, Bill.
Hear me? I'll pledge 250.
Oh, great. You said 50?
250.
250. Wow.
Or
Bless
20.
you, Bill.
That's
So-
Bill Langford, my son's godfather.
Oh, well, good choice of godfathers.
This is an amazing group by Mark and Guy. Go way back to early Nicaragua days.
Mm.
So I think my count is we're just 50 from our goal. We have what, final 50 to.
And here's someone who
There's
said,
2 25s in the chat.
yeah,
Oh, do we? Okay.
Yeah, you have 2 25s in the chat, so there's your 50.
Okay. Do you want to, I announce, let's see. Oh, Vicky, we got 25 from Vicky, and it sounds like we have 25 from Karen.
Yeah.
Great. And Karen is the regional organizer for the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador, CISPAS. And that's kind of the past history I have with working with Jose back when he was getting us all building the solidarity movement in San Francisco, and got one of the people that got me active. All right, well, thank you, everyone. And now opening it up to questions. Anybody have any questions for our presenters?
You know, Carl, there's 2 things that I kind of would like to add to what I said.
Please do.
Things that
Yeah.
just listening to the rest of you speak that kind of prompted something. First, just regarding Xiomara Castro's inauguration, that was the 27th of January. And the very first thing she did, foreign policy wise, that very afternoon of the 27th was to reestablish diplomatic relations with Venezuela, with the democratically elected government of Venezuela, and the Venezuelan embassy in Tegucigalpa was reopened that evening. So that to me is just again playing into the overall political and economic changes throughout the hemisphere. That's a pretty significant one that was the very first thing she did. Was very significant. And then also one of you mentioned I think Jose, the coming elections in Brazil and Colombia this year. It's really, really important to remember that Colombia is a NATO global partner. Colombia is not on the North Atlantic coast, but it is a NATO global partner. And with what we're watching unfold in Europe at the moment, this is even more important to pay attention to Colombia and the impact in the hemisphere. But there's been so much progress in the last 14 months with the various elections, moving forward to more progressive governments, moving away from the neoliberal economic model and moving to, a multilateral hemisphere. So anyway, thank you for prompting those thoughts from several of you.
Anybody else have any questions for our presenters? Or any comments? Jose?
Yeah, when we were in Honduras, I remember this particular time where Hondurans had this, torches event every Friday. And there was this particular one where, we were marching and we were probably 15 people on a Friday night. And our mission was to walk over a bridge and take the bridge over. And there were 150 police waiting for us. So when I look at our group, said, there's no way we can take over the bridge. So, we turned around and kind of, did a rally and speeches and then we finished. But the point I want to make is that sometimes our actions don't don't look like we are making any progress. You know, there was a particular slogan in Honduras. The slogan was "Fuera Ho." Ho means Juan Orlando Hernandez. Very simple, and everybody could agree. You know, even if they couldn't agree on many things, they could agree on "Fuera Ho." Very straightforward, and the movement was building. It didn't show. It didn't show on the streets because the repression was such that if you know you ended up in jail like the Wapinol 8, you could be falsely accused and dedicate the next 3 years of your life to try to release. But the anger was inside, and people were building alliances. And when the elections came, massively, people vote in historical numbers and defeat Juan Orlando in a peaceful way. So our actions, sometimes we might not see immediate results, but let's keep doing them. Whether it's a text, whether it's a message of support, or join a delegation, or making a donation, anything will contribute. And change will come eventually. It's a matter of building the movement, nationally, internationally, and we are pretty much part of that. And we are very proud of each of our organizations and individuals that have been working with the people.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Hi, Carol.
It's just a practical question. It says to send checks to College Avenue. Is that Share? It's the address is for Share, right?
Yes, Share Foundation. Make a check to Share to 2425 College.
And make it out to Share Foundation?
Yes.
Okay, Share Foundation.
Well, I'll jump in with a question. Maybe somebody can help with this. But as far as Ho going, I hear that Ho may be going to New York.
Oh, he is, isn't he?
He was arrested.
Wasn't
But I
it
don't know that it's-
wonderful watching him go out in chains? That was just amazing.
Yeah. Mm.
And does anybody want to relate what the people were chanting during the inauguration when Kamala Harris was there?
What were they chanting?
Take him with you.
Take him with you.
Take him with you. Take him with you.
Oh,
Yeah,
take him with you.
when she arrived, yeah.
So it isn't definite that he's going to New York?
It might take some time, it might take some time, and but the fact that symbolically he was arrested, he's not only a criminal for those charges, he's a criminal for lots of violations of human rights in Honduras.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the law in Honduras is not strong enough to charge him there, so he probably will be charged for a few cases in the US, but he has many, many more, and there are many more people around him that has been causing a lot of violations to the right of the Honduran people over the last decade.
I have a question. For those of you who may have more knowledge about Honduras and Libre and neoliberalism and alternatives to it, I've been to Cuba many times. And in my opinion, when we talk about alternatives to neoliberalism, we're really talking about some transformational institutions like healthcare for all, public education, worker-owned cooperatives, the state taking ownership of energy and other critical parts of the economy, using a democratic form of governance for those institutions. And so I'm wondering, I have not seen the Partido Libre program for transformation, but I believe all of those are necessary. And I really haven't heard, much about actually replacing capitalism, not just resisting, but replacing. Does anybody have any particular knowledge about replacing?
I was in a conversation with somebody when we were there, and I think a huge barrier to a lot of the transformation that's going to take place is the debt that the country will accrue by trying to gain back so much that was sold. So, for example, the freeway that was built, I think, and Jose, correct me if I'm wrong, but from San Pedro Sula to Tegucigalpa was sold to a Colombian company. And if Xiomara tries to, and to try to get a lot of the resources that have actually been sold to private capital back, that's what they were saying. It says huge barriers because so much was actually sold to people outside of the country. So, again, the ideal is you just take it back. But I do think that there's a huge barrier because previously, over the last 12 years, the country was looted and sold internationally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a problem, including in Nicaragua and Venezuela, is that there are important parts of the economy that are privatized, and you either go the way of Cuba or you don't, where you actually, nationalize industries. And so that's why I was asking, because I firmly believe that if new institutions do not evolve that are democratic and egalitarian, then we're going to be suffering through a long period of neoliberalism, whether you want to call it that or not. We're still going to have the same institutions as we had before. And so that's what I'm talking about, institutional change that is democratic and egalitarian, which typically, in order to make it really effective, requires democratic ownership. And that's the part that I don't really hear much talking about in Partido Libre, and that's my concern, that we're not going to have the deep transformation that's really necessary to overcome the current economic system and prevent, for example, the migration of more and more people to the United States.
Any others?
There's someone with his hand up.
Matthew?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Sorry I got here late, had a meeting before this. But I wanted to, make sure that to hear from you all about how it was being at the inauguration. And but one particular question, actually piggybacking off of what you were bringing up, Richard, which was a really great question. What I saw in the news today was that Miriam Miranda, the leader of Ofrane in Honduras, has been threatened with death threats. And it's related to her and Ofrane denouncing the presence of armed men in Triunfo de la Cruz, a community where there were a series of disappearances of leaders from Ofrane. I believe 1 or 2 years ago. I believe it was 2 years ago. And after denouncing this, she started receiving all these death threats. And so I think this is maybe a good example, is like under the Castro administration, how will the response to these kinds of things differ? And it's probably hard to know because we don't know how they're responding, maybe not yet. But we already do see some fundamental things like they've begun a commission of sorts in the Aguan Valley to start addressing the land conflicts in the Aguan Valley and bringing together the business interests as well as the campesinos and campesinos who have and cooperatives who have historic land titles to land. And that's actually happening. That's something they've been fighting and asking for years, and so seeing those things brings me a lot of hope. But I think, I guess also just piggybacking off of what you brought up, Richard, that what will it look like to see a deeper change? And is that possible, maybe you don't have an answer to it now. That's fine. I just thought I'd share that.
I think of the small local ways, right? Like I think there's always this big focus on the national politics, but what are the ways that small local communities are really trying to have their own rights, right? And so the land conflicts in the Guan are great regions and where communities come together and collectively reclaim the land and then can model that in ways. So I'm glad you shared that, Matthew. Thanks.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not a an authority on cooperatives.
Oh, you're muted, Richard.
Muted. What I said is I am not an authority on cooperatives, but I have helped establish several of them here in San Jose. And we take people to Cuba specifically to see the new non-agricultural cooperatives in Cuba. And we take people to Mondragon, Spain to see the cooperatives in Mondragon. And so last Sunday, when I was talking to Jacqueline Trejo, she was saying, well, you should bring your experience to Macuilizo because we don't have much experience in creating agricultural or any kind of cooperatives. And yet, you know, cooperatives certainly based on ownership and one person, one vote, democratic decision-making, and actually sharing profits as opposed to a typical corporation is exactly the kind of transformation that I think would really make a difference in a place like Macuilizo. I think what you're bringing up, Amy, is start local. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
You have to start local and demonstrate that it's possible. And then it gets it can grow into something, you know, much bigger. But so we do have to start locally with these changes.
So Richard, when are you going?
I may go. Jose is going to tell us when we're going back. I think in July. You never know. Maybe July.
Do we have any more questions or comments?
Jose, is there anything new about what Richard just said about us going there or about the folks from Wapanol coming here?
Are we ready for that point, Carl?
I'm going to ask Vicky if she could say some things about how youth can get involved.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an undergrad, or gosh, I'm a graduate student with at USF. Amy is the program director of the program that I'm in, Migration Studies. So this is my third trip to Honduras. I was there in July, and then I was there again in December, and then again in January. And so I think, you know, for me, it's really powerful because there are, you know, multiple generations that are part of these trips. And so you get to learn a lot and kind of grow from each other in that. But then I think in terms of the hope of these trips is that it is like sustainable over time. And so with that, we do want to help kind of get a younger audience involved, especially with organizing and kind of being part of the MILPA actually in Honduras. So people who are willing to kind of be in the fields and serving there. So I don't know, I think it's been a really powerful experience to walk alongside communities. And I think it's really important for my generation and young people to have that experience and also learn what solidarity work looks like so that we can continue partnering and walking alongside these communities for longer periods of time too. But yeah, Jose, you, I think, are going to talk a little bit about our next trip and what the possibilities are.
Sure. And the idea is to go in the first week in July and the second week in December. So if you can mark your calendar, we'll produce a flyer and the details of that delegation. But it starts by asking many people. We have found that if we ask 100 people, one will say maybe. And when we get a maybe, we meet with that person and start, going over the obstacles. Simple things as, having your passport, valid for 6 months, or, finding the money to go. And I think each of us can play a role. Like if each of us today can commit to invite 100 people with the goal of getting one person. So together we can have a 20-person delegation to go in July. When we go, the locals will have a number of activities that they are already organizing. So they don't have to organize something for us. So in July, they will have a fair, where all the different producers will come together for a day to share their produce, but also to share their experience. And the power of the delegation is, with both ways. One, just to arrive there in a place like Macuelizo, and meet with people, and start dreaming together, like Richard is saying, can we see a co-op going? Maybe we can have a couple people go in advance to meet with some of the leaders and do a workshop on what does it mean, a co-op. I think the producers of the community will visit already to join forces and take the produce to the market in a co-op way, where you have the mayor helping, or we go to Las Vegas and get these musical instruments. Perhaps we bring some people that know a little bit about music and do workshops to share. So it's about developing a relationship with them, but in concrete ways. We like the Guapinol. The release of the Guapinol 8, has been an example of how we join the community in a very concrete way, that has many layers, including accessing, our representatives in Congress to send a tweet, or accessing lawyers and, physically working with them at the campamento was a very powerful experience. It's a 24-hour vigil, 24-hour presence in front of the court, where people are saying release them, and of course the forces to be will say no, it's not possible, and people keep coming back, and keep doing more activities and more press conferences and pressuring until they were released. This, I think, is an example for us, for instance, in El Salvador, how to release our political prisoners in El Salvador. So we are a big fan of the delegations. I think it's a powerful way of getting to know the issues. The issues are not simple, and the more we get to know it, the more we will understand and realize that we in the US are part of the problem, but also could be part of the solution. So I invite you to mark your calendars for the first week in July and the second week in December. And if you want to join a committee to start planning, and going the details, there might be a number of people that wish to go, but might not have the money. And we might be able to find frequent flyer miles or organize a small, event to raise the funds. And come to July, we will have a delegation. It's always interesting to know who will be in this delegation, like who were going to be the people at the inauguration. Out of so many, this group was the one chosen, and we consider ourselves ambassadors because many wished to go, but they couldn't go. But we were able to go and feel the energy at the stadium. When we were there, and thousands of people chanting and enjoying, that victory, or seeing Juan Orlando, being escorted, out of his house to jail. So mark your calendar, consider going, but consider identifying people that it could be very young people, in high school or in college, all the way to 92. 92 is our limit.
Uh-oh.
We might make an exception, but so far 92 has been the top limit, and we will do our very, very best that you will be safe, that you will be healthy, and that you will have a wonderful experience. And then our goal is that you fall in love with the struggle and participate, when you come back in many, many other ways.
Great. Thank you, Jose. And I know earlier I just touched on our legislative work. So, as we, Xiomara Castro is still facing kind of that resistance, that the power of the military there, that we still need to be campaigning for the Berta Cáceres Act, and National CISPAS has been in discussions with the Mesoamerican Working Group and the Honduran Solidarity Network on strategies around cutting that military and security funding. Want to ask Karen, as the regional organizer for CISPAS, to talk about that legislative work. And
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, good to see you all again. Hi, Teresa. Well, yeah, so I mentioned a little bit at the beginning about our legislative work. So pretty much for the past few years, we've had this campaign to cut military and security aid to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. We've been joined by many wonderful organizations who have also endorsed our campaign and joined us in congressional visits. More specifically, we've been targeting these types of funding through the congressional appropriations process, and specifically been targeting the funds called foreign military financing, international military education training, and there was another one, I forget, I think it was INCLE, but I forgot what the acronym stands for, as well as economic development funds that are sent to those three countries, which CISPAS, we are in close communication with organizations in El Salvador that are grassroots and that we've had relationships with them for a very long time, who have also let us know that these sort of economic development aid funds are not actually helpful. And in fact, local communities oppose them because they bring forth projects that are like hydroelectric projects, kind of like what was shared around projects in Honduras, and also like the privatization of services and resources. And so all of that is tied, back to the US that funds that, and also the militarization of like the police forces in El Salvador under this current president, and also what we've seen right in Honduras, and how the US basically is funding that type of political repression. And so we've been calling out the ways in which the US is complicit in that and continues to support the Bukele administration in that way, and also, the governments in Honduras and Guatemala in that way. And so that's a little bit about the work that we've been doing, is trying to get those funds to be cut. And we were actually able to get Congress to agree to withhold or cut the foreign military financing for fiscal year 2021, which was really exciting. And I think it's the first time since the Civil War that they had withheld military financing to El Salvador. So that was a really big win and very encouraging. And so That's what we are currently working on. And right now we're kind of in between kind of a more of a like campaign evaluation moment where we're trying to reflect and figure out what our next moves are. But likely it will entail continuing to work on this congressional campaign. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit more info. Again, happy to talk more about it. And I can put my email in the chat in case anybody wants to talk more about it.
Yeah, and that Karen was talking about the funding that goes, the military and security funding goes through the State Department. We're also launched a campaign to get the military funding that goes through the Pentagon stopped, and get that, you know, in the National Defense Authorization Act. And we had meetings with the staff of Rokana, and then recently met directly with Jimmy Panetta about those issues, and Congressional Representative Jimmy Panetta of Monterey is also working on a fact-finding delegation to Central America. So we all need to be kind of on top of that and working towards, you know, making sure they're meeting and hearing from the voices of the people. Wanted to ask Terry and Carol if you'd want to talk about some of the work of the Task Force on the Americas and some of the upcoming delegations that the task force is organizing. I believe there's one planned for Colombia. And Terry, I know you're always organizing delegations.
I would prefer that you do it, Terry.
Well, I guess I would say, you know, we don't have anything definitive at this point. We just had our annual retreat where we do our board, basically, you know, an all-day board planning session for the year. And so what we are looking at is Honduras, Colombia, possibly Colombia, or in partnership with one or two other organizations for Colombia to go for the elections, which are late May. And it would be a solidarity trip to stand, you know, with the people. This is going to be a really, really tough election there, especially now with them. It's going to be very, very interesting. I think it's even more compelling now to go to Colombia, watching what's happening in Europe and with NATO and the United States specifically. And Colombia is a NATO global partner. They're one of two or three now. There's one in Asia as well. So it's going to be really fascinating to watch what happens between now and May. Maybe impossible to go to Colombia, maybe like really, but very, very important to go. And we had also talked about Mexico, which is where I'm currently based, and Puerto Rico. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
That's been on our wish list for a long time. And
so that's actually something I've actually started pursuing fairly strongly. So the thing with Puerto Rico is that we in mainland US tend to forget they are US citizens, but not full citizens. And so it's really so important to talk to them in the context of Latin America and the Caribbean. And because they have such an important story to tell about citizenship, about imperialism, first being, you know, part of Spain and now part of the US, and citizenship only in part and to serve in the US military, but they don't have full citizenship, so they have no representation in Congress. Anyway, it's very, you know,
and debt,
and of course the disaster capitalism that's happening there, and forcing, you know, a model of full island privatization. So a lot to study there. It's a microcosm for many, many issues.
Okay. Thank you, Terry. And I'm going to draw the program to a close, but before doing so, is there anybody who would like to make a very brief announcement about any upcoming events? Melvin, if you're connected there, would you like to announce anything the Unitarians are doing? Melvin, if you're muted, but maybe he stepped away from his computer. All right, and Michael,
Oh,
all right, well, thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for being a part of this, being a very successful event.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful
Carl, I
to
didn't hear
travel
you.
with all of you and see you all again. Hey, Michael Bass, a big shout out to you.
yeah.
This is
I like
Terry.
his long hair.
Thank you, Carl and Cispes, for organizing this
Thank you,
beautiful
Carl. Thank you.
event. Gracias.
And the Task Force in the Americas.
Yes, thank you, Mark. for
Good
the
to see you,
pictures, the
Terry. Good to see
images.
everybody.
Yeah,
here.
you too.
I was a
Good to
little
see
late to
you,
the meeting.
Michael.
I'm sorry.
There's
Yeah.
Teresa too.
Teresa made it afterwards. Me and Matthew were on a different thing.
Thank you, Ramon, for being a part of this. Thank you, Phil, and see
Hey,
you.
Jocelyn, greetings.
Teresa, good to
compañero.
see you. I didn't see you when I didn't. Let's see. You must,
Think she just came. She just appeared.
oh, yeah.
I reappeared.
Oh, reappeared. Okay.
We'll go for a walk,
Papinol,
Michael.
papinol.
I
Estamos
hope to see you all in
campos.
person
Eso.
De
sometime.
veras, de
Bye,
veras.
everyone.
Live.
Guapinol, resiste Guapinol.
Existe, vamos, Guapinol.
Okay.
Great to see everybody. Stay in touch.
Good
Mhm.
seeing you, Matthew.
Yeah.
All
I'll
right.
come and see you this
Dale.
week, Jose, in the office.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Great to see. All right. Take good care.
Good
Take
seeing you,
good care.
Michael.
everybody.
What campaigns